Hello, grade 12 learners. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Since tomorrow you'll be writing history, paper 1. I hope everyone can hear me clearly, good people. So first of all, we are going to deal with the essay of Vietnam War. So there is something that I want you to understand when it comes to history. There is nothing that is hard. It's all about you knowing what you will be writing about in your examination. So now I will be focusing that much on the Vietnam War since you'll be writing about it tomorrow. Which Vietnam War, good people, it's gonna be the essay that you're gonna find on the last question, which is question 6, and it will be carrying about 50 marks. I believe that makes sense. It will be about 50 marks, the Vietnam War that you'll be writing tomorrow. So there is a tip that I want to give you. There is a tip that I want to give you. First of all, you must know the causes. When you are writing your essay, I want to see you including what the causes. When I speak about the causes, I'm simply speaking about what I want to see you talking about who? Dim oppressive rules. When we talk about Dim's oppressive rules, we are talking about Dim who was refusing or refusal of elections. Does that make sense? Remember, there were elections that were going to take place in the Vietnam to unite both North and the South. But now, Ho Chi Minh refused. Does that make sense? So in your essay, I want to see you writing about what Dim refusal of the elections. I believe that makes sense. Number 2, I want to see you talking about what the US involvement. Why did the Americans got involved in a war? That's also what is important in your essay. I want to see you talking about the involvement of the Americans. Remember, the problem it was what? Containment, right? I'm going to explain that in an essay. Domino theory, I'm going to explain that in an essay. Then advisors. When we talk about the advisors, we are talking about what? Military advisors. I believe that makes sense. Then I also want to see you, good people, talking about the safe village. I want to see you talking about what the safe village policy that was introduced by the Americans. I believe that makes sense. Then now, I also want to see you talking about what the increasement of the involvement of the Americans in the war, which is we are talking about what US involvement, which they included what the troops. What are we talking about when we talk about the troops? We are talking about the soldiers. I want you to talk about the fighting method that the USA used. For instance, there is what? Operation Rolling Thunder. Does that make sense? And there is also what? Chemical weapons. I want to see you talking about Agent Blue and Agent Orange. Those are the chemicals that were used by the United States of America in the war. I believe that makes a lot of sense. Then now, I also want to see you talking about what Viet Cong responses. How did Viet Cong respond, right, in an USA involvement or bombing of the USA? Does that make sense? So now, here is Tet offensive. I want to see you talking about the Tet offensive, and I want to see the results of the Tet offensive in an essay. You must include what the result of what of the Tet offensive in an essay. Number 3, I also want to see you talking about what the guerrilla warfare. What kind of a method did the Viet Cong or the Vietnam use to fight against what USA? I believe that makes sense. And good people, I also want to see you talking about the public opinion. When we talk about the public opinion, I want to see you what did the people say about the war, right? I want to see My La massacre in your essay. I want to see US atrocities. I believe that makes sense. I want to see you, good people, talking about what chemical weapons that were used by the Americans. Then at the end of your essay, I want to see you showing us that the war ended. And I want to see the Viet Cong victorious. You must prove in your essay that the Viet Congs are the one who won the war. Does that make sense? And there is something that I always say to you, that USA did not win the war, but Viet Congs are the one who won the war, or Vietnam won the war against what? America. Does that make sense? And there is something that I also have to tell you about. When we talk about this one, good people, United Communist Vietnam. So that means now Vietnam became what? A communist country. I believe that makes sense. Remember, it is really unfair for you to talk about the Vietnam War without including USSR and USA and China. Does that make sense? I'm going to explain that while I will be teaching you the essay. So here's your essay, good people, that I wrote for you, and which I believe that if you can go tomorrow and write this essay the way it is, definitely you are going to get great marks and you will remember me. You are going to remember me. Does that make sense? You are going to remember me. So here's the essay, good people, that I'm about to teach you now. That's what that Vietnam War, right? So when we talk about the Vietnam War, is the extension of Cold War. When we talk about the Vietnam War, is the what is an extension of Cold War. I believe that makes sense. Is the extension of what? Of Cold War. I believe that makes sense. So when we talk about the Vietnam War, we are simply talking about the extension of Cold War. What do I mean when I say the extension of Cold War? That means now this war, good people, started between the USA and USSR. Does that make sense? So when you are writing your essay, it will depend on the question that you're going to get, but we're going to deal with the questions together. First of all, or first thing that we should deal with, that we should know about this essay, good people. Vietnam was divided into two. There was the North and the South. Does that make sense? Vietnam was divided into two. There was the North and the South. Does that make sense? You write that point, you get your marks. Does it make sense? Vietnam was divided into two. There was the North and the South. At the North, there was Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh, he was a communist, he was popular, he was wanted by everyone. And Ho Chi Minh wanted to unite both North and the South. Does that make sense, good people? I'm going to repeat again. Vietnam was divided into two. There was the North and the South. At the North, there was Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh, he was a communist, he was popular, he was wanted by everyone, and he wanted to unite both North and the South. I believe that's clear. I believe what I've just said to you, it's clear. Vietnam was divided into two. There was the North and the South. At the North, there was Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh, he was a communist. Ho Chi Minh, he was popular. Ho Chi Minh, he was wanted by everyone. And he also wanted to unite both North and the South. I believe that makes sense. Then now, who was at the South? At the South, there was Dim or Ho Chi Dim. Dim, he was a capitalist, he was unpopular, he was brutal, and he was also what? Corrupt. Does that make sense? And he did not wanted to unite both North and the South. I believe that makes sense, good people. Here's are two different people. Does that make sense? We have who? We have Ho Chi Minh here. I mean, we have Ho Chi Minh here. Then here we have who? We have Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh was at the south. Then Ho Chi Minh, he was at the north. I believe we understand the difference between these two leaders. And the difference between these two leaders, Ho Chi Minh, he was a communist, he was popular, he was wanted by everyone, he wanted to unite both North and the South. But this one, Ho Chi Minh, he was a capitalist, he was unpopular, he was brutal, he was corrupt, and he did not want to unite both North and the South. I believe we are understanding, and no one of us must have what problem about what I am teaching you now. Then now, at the south again, good people, there was a small group called Viet Cong that had 100,000 members, which wanted to unite both North and the South. So do you see now, this group, good people, it wants to unite both North and the South. Where they are at the South, they want to unite both North and the South. Where do they want to unite? Under the umbrella of who? Of DIM. They are under the leadership of DIM, but DIM does not want to unite. And then this group wants to unite. I believe that makes sense. I'm going to repeat again all of these points. Vietnam was divided into two. There was the North and the South. At the North, there was Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh, he was a communist, he was popular, he was wanted by everyone, and he wanted to unite both North and the South. I believe that makes sense. At the South, there was Ho Chi Minh. He was a capitalist, he was unpopular, he was brutal, he was corrupt, and he did not want to unite both North and the South. I believe that makes sense. Then here, we are saying at the South, there was a small group called Viet Cong that had 100,000 members, which wanted to unite both North and the South. Does that make sense? So now we must know, why did the US get involved in a war? Why did the America got involved in a war? Because now when we are looking at this thing, the war is between Ho Chi Minh and Ho Chi Minh, because Ho Chi Minh doesn't want to unite, and then Ho Chi Minh wants to unite. Does that make sense? And Ho Chi Minh is a communist, and then Ho Chi Minh is a capitalist. Does that make sense? And Ho Chi Minh, he was popular. Then Ho Chi Minh, he was unpopular. And Ho Chi Minh wanted to unite both North and the South. But Ho Chi Minh did not wanted to unite both North and the South. So now we have to understand, why did the USA got involved in a war? That's what we should understand now. Why did the USA got involved in a war? That's what we should understand, good people. We have to understand, why did the USA got involved in a war? That's what we should understand now. That's what we need to understand. Why did the USA got involved in a war? Number one, there was an agreement that elections should be held in 1956 to unite the country. So there was an agreement, good people, that happened already, that there must be elections that must be held in 1956 that will do what? Unite the country. Don't forget the fact that the country is divided into two. Let us not forget the fact that the country is divided into two. So now there was an agreement that election should be held in 1956 to unite the country. Then Diem or Ho Chi Minh, the leader of the South Vietnam, refused to have the elections, fearing what? Communist victory. Remember, we have the communist and what? And the capitalist. And when we talk about the communist, the good people, it was spreading faster than the capitalist. Does that make sense? So Ho Chi Minh, he was fearing Ho Chi Minh, he was fearing that uh, if ever they will unite both North and the South, that means now communist is the one that will win. I believe that makes sense. So America was against the elections because they wanted to fight against the evil of communism. Americans wanted to stop the spread of American wanted to stop communism. Does that make sense? And American wanted to contain the spread of communism. And American knew that USSR and China were supporting what North Vietnam or communism. So do we understand what is happening here? That means now USSR and China, they are pushing their own theory. Does that make sense? They are pushing their own agenda, which they are supporting what? They are supporting the North Vietnam. Remember who is the leader at the North Vietnam? It's what? It's Ho Chi Minh. I believe that makes sense. I believe that makes sense, good people. So America was against the elections because they wanted to fight against the evil of communism. American wanted to stop communism. American wanted to contain the spread of communism. What is to contain something from spreading? When we talk about containing something from spreading, we are talking about stopping something from spreading. I believe that makes sense and you are going to remember me. So now we are saying America knew that USSR and China were supporting what? Not Vietnam or communism. Does that make sense? So now the problem was domino theory. In your essay, you must make sure that you include this name, domino theory or domino effect. You must include it. The problem was domino theory. If Vietnam could become communist, they were sure that even the neighboring countries will become what? Communist country. So that is why USA got involved in a war. They wanted to fight against the evil of communism. American wanted to stop communism. American wanted to contain the spread of communism. And Americans knew that Russia and China were supporting what? The North Vietnam or communism. And the problem was domino theory. If Vietnam could become a communist, they were sure that even the neighboring countries will become communist. I believe that makes sense. Now we understand the reasons why did the USA got involved in a war. I believe all of us we can now understand the reasons why did the USA got involved in a war. I believe that makes sense. I believe that makes sense. Now let us move forward. We have to know what did America do to help Ho Chi Minh? What did America do to help who? Ho Chi Minh. Does that make sense? Remember, Ho Chi Minh is the one at the south, and then Ho Chi Minh is the one at the north. I believe that makes sense. And now America is getting involved in a war because it wants to fight against the evil of communism. American wanted to stop communism. American wanted to contain the spread of communism. American knew that USSR and China were supporting what? Not Vietnam or communism. And the problem was what? Domino theory. If Vietnam could become a communist country, they were sure that even the neighboring countries, they will become communist country. I believe that makes sense. Then now, what did America do to help Ho Chi Minh? We have to understand what did America do to help what? D, right? Let us understand why did the America do to help them. Number one, America helped them with military advisors. America gave them lot of money and modern weapons to South Vietnam. By November 1963, Johnson became a new president and he sent 16,000 military advisors. Do we understand, good people? I want you to include all of these points when you are writing your essay in your examination. You must include these points. We said number one, America helped them with military advisors. America gave them lot of money and modern weapons to South Vietnam. By November 1963, Johnson became a new president and he sent 16,000 military advisors. They also introduced the safe village policy, whereby they forced everyone to live inside the village, hoping to isolate the Viet Cong. Does that make sense? The safe village policy did not work because most of Viet Cong lived inside the villages. They were farmers by day and guerrilla fighters by night. Does that make sense, good people? They were farmers by day and guerrilla fighters at night. I believe that makes sense. So now I'm going to repeat myself. What did America do to help them? They helped them with military advisors. America gave them a lot of money and modern weapons to South Vietnam. By November 1963, Johnson became a new president and he sent 16,000 military advisors. They also introduced the safe policy, the safe village policy, whereby they forced everyone to live inside the village, hoping to isolate the Viet Cong outside. Does that make sense? The safe village policy did not work because most of the Viet Cong lived inside the villages. They were farmers by day and guerrilla fighters by night. Diem is still unpopular because he was corrupt. Does that make sense? So now, Diem is becoming what? Unpopular. But they gave him a lot of money and modern weapons, but he's still what? Unpopular. Why is he still unpopular? It's because of what? He is corrupt. Does that make sense? These are the things that America did to help what? To help Diem. Then let us move forward. We have to understand, how did Johnson escalate the war after 1963? Remember, in November 1963, Johnson became the new president of America. So we have to understand, how did Johnson escalate or continue with the war after the 1963? We must understand, how did he continue with the war after 1963? Does that make sense? At first, he continued to send military advisors. That means now he's increasing the involvement of Americans in the war. He's increasing the involvement of Americans in the war because he continued to send military advisors. Number two, Johnson decided to increase the involvement of Americans. Number three, in 1964, American ship in the Gulf of Tonkin was attacked by the North Vietnam. So now there is a ship of Americans in 1964 that was attacked by what? The North Vietnam. So in 1964, American ship in the Gulf of Tonkin was attacked by the North Vietnam. Johnson asked for money to fight against Vietnam, right? Johnson, he told the US soldiers to quick defeat the Viet Cong. Johnson told the US soldiers to bomb the North Vietnam. By 1963, there was about 500 US troops at the South Vietnam. I believe that makes sense, good people. So now, Johnson, he was increasing the involvement of what? Of the Americans in the war, because now he's asking for money to fight against what? The Vietnam. Does that make sense? I believe we are understanding of what is happening. Remember, good people, at first, we spoke about the division of what of Northern Vietnam. Number 2, we spoke about why did the USA get involved in a war. Number 3, we spoke about what did America do to help them. Number 4, we are now talking about, well, how did Johnson escalate the war after 1963. As we said that at first he continued to send military advisors. Number 2, Johnson decided to increase the involvement of American. In 1964, American ship in the Gulf of Tonkin was attacked by the North Vietnam. Johnson asked for money to fight against the Vietnam. Then Johnson, he told the US soldiers to quick defeat the Viet Cong. Johnson told the US soldiers to bomb the North Vietnam. By 1968, there was about 500,000 US troops at the South Vietnam. Why are they there, good people? They are there to defeat what? The Viet Cong. And remember, Viet Cong, it was a small group that didn't have more than 100,000 people. I believe that makes sense. I believe that makes a lot of sense. Then let us move forward. How did North Vietnam try to fight back against the American bombers? Remember now, America is bombing the North Vietnam. So now we have to understand, how did they fight back? Does that make sense? Number 1, Viet Cong started guerrilla war. They used the anti-aircraft guns, they used the air missiles, they used the fighter planes. Because of these three things, over 1,400 US planes were shot down between 1965 and 1968. Because of these three things, good people. Because of these three things, the US over 1,400 US planes that were shot down. So, how did the Vietnam try to fight back against the American bombers? We said number 1, Viet Cong started guerrilla warfare. They used the anti-aircraft guns, they used the air missiles, they used the fighter planes. Because of these three things, over 1,400 US planes were shot down between 1965 and 1968. You are collecting your marks, good people, in your examination. So now we have to understand, how did the Vietnam use guerrilla warfare or guerrilla tactics? They avoided face-to-face fights. They were fighting in a small units. They used ambush. What is an ambush? Ambush means surprise attack. Does that make sense? Vietnams, they know their side country. That means they know their countryside. Remember, good people, that's their home. That's their home ground. They know all of that place. They know all of that place. So definitely it was an advantage to them because they knew their forest. They knew their forest. So definitely it was advantage to them. So now let us continue. We said, how did the Vietnams use guerrilla warfare? Avoided face-to-face fights, fighting in a small unit. They used ambush, which is ambush attack means what? Surprise attack. Vietnams, they know their countryside. They did not wear uniform. They dug 250 kilometers of tunnels to hide in, and in the tunnels contained kitchens, weapon stores, hospitals, and living quarters. The Viet Cong guerrillas were helped by local people. So, in other ways, the Viet Cong enjoyed the support of their local people. Does that make sense? They would appear from nowhere, kill and disappear. In other ways, good people, they did hit and run. It was impossible to fight an enemy you could not find, or you could never find, because it was hard to identify the Viet Congs because they did not wear uniform and they avoided face-to-face fight. That means they would appear, kill, and disappear. Does that make sense? Those are the things that I want you to write in your essay, and you are going to remember me. Viet Cong moved undictated. That means they were untraceable. Does that make sense? Viet Cong used booby traps and landmines were planted. And Viet Cong were highly experienced, having fought liberation against colonial rule. Does that make sense? So now, the soldiers of Vietnam, or the Viet Congs, they were what? Highly experienced, because they've been fighting liberation against the colonial rule. Then let us see about the USA soldiers. USA soldiers used young, inexperienced soldiers. US Army were not trained in guerrilla warfare. Does that make sense? So they were not trained for what? Fighting in guerrilla warfare. Does that make sense? Then let us understand, what method of fighting did America use? Now we have to understand. Remember, now we know the guerrilla tactics that were used by Viet Cong, but now we have to understand what kind of a method that was used by the USA. I'm going to repeat again. How did the Vietnam use the guerrilla warfare or the guerrilla tactics? Avoid face-to-face fights, fight in the small units. They used ambush attack, which is ambush mean surprise attack. Vietnam, they know their countryside. They did not wear uniform. They dug 250 of tunnels to hide in, and in the tunnel contained kitchens, weapon stores, hospitals, and living quarters. And the Viet Cong guerrillas were helped by local people, which is Viet Cong, they enjoyed the support of their local people, and they would appear from nowhere, kill and disappear. As I said to you, they did what? Hit and run. It was impossible to fight an enemy you could never fight. Viet Cong moved undictated. That means they were untraceable. It was difficult to identify the Viet Congs. And Viet Cong used booby traps, landmines were planted. And Viet Cong were highly experienced, having fought liberation against the colonial rule. Then USA used young, inexperienced soldiers, which is US Army were not trained in guerrilla warfare. Then now let us understand, what kind of a method did America use to fight against what? The Viet Cong, or a small country like Viet Cong. They fought in a high tech, or American used the high technology. That's how America fought against what? The Viet Cong. They fought in a what? High tech, or they used the high technology. That's number one. Number two, American were using B-52 bomber planes. They used the helicopters. They used chemical warfare such as Agent Blue and Agent Orange. Does that make sense? They used search and destroy. They used Operation Rolling Thunder. The USA was not winning in the war. So that means now USA was not winning. All of these strategies that USA used, it was not working for it. Does that make sense? And then now we said they used Operation Rolling Thunder. So now we have to understand or explain in our essay what is an Operation Rolling Thunder. Does that make sense? And we have to understand, why did they begin to start using what? Operation Rolling Thunder. When we talk about the Operation Rolling Thunder, Americans were bombing the North military industrial. Does that make sense? They were bombing the North Vietnam military and industrial target. That's what Operation Rolling Thunder. That means they are not bombing everything, but they are bombing certain things that they are targeting. For instance, they were bombing what? Military and industrial target. Number two, Americans were bombing bridges, army brackets, railways, roads, and army depots. Those are the things that the American was bombing were at the North Vietnam. Does that make sense? So the aim of bombing the North Vietnam, they wanted to stop the support from the North Vietnam to the Viet Cong. Remember, Ho Chi Minh, he was the leader at the North. And as a leader at the North, there is a group at the South that want the very same thing that he wants. So he was supporting that group. Does that make sense? So he was supporting the Viet Cong. So now the reason Americans, they started to bomb this industrial target, they wanted to stop the support from Ho Chi Minh to the what? To the Viet Cong. I believe that makes sense. And you are going to remember me. This essay, good people, is very simple. It's very simple. Then let us understand what is meant by search and destroy. American army was set to go and search and kill Viet Cong that they could find. So when we talk about the search and destroy, it's whereby you are being sent to go and search and kill the Viet Cong that you could find. I believe that makes sense. So when we talk about the search and destroy, the American army was sent to go and search and kill the Viet Cong that they could find. Number two, USA army went to the villages to search and kill the Viet Congs. Does that make sense? Search and destroy was brutal because their friends were killed by the Viet Cong. Because how can you kill people that you are unable to dictate? Because you go there looking for Vietnams or for Viet Cong, and Viet Congs are not wearing uniform. As a soldier, you are wearing a uniform. The moment you appear, the Viet Cong, they see you first. Does that make sense? So the reason we say search and destroy was brutal because their friends were killed by Viet Cong. Number three is that the US Army High Command measured the success or failure of search and destroy by the body count, meaning the number of Viet Cong killed. So they used to count bodies of the Viet Cong that they were killed just to measure if the search and destroy is successful or not successful. And good people, helicopters were used during search and destroy, and helicopters were to carry what? Troops, arms, and supplies. Does that make sense? To their surprise, or to the surprise of America, Viet Cong was still in existence and very strong. So now we have to understand when we talk about what the Operation Rolling Thunder. Remember, now we understand what is a search and destroy. All right. Now we have to understand what is what Operation Rolling Thunder. When we talk about the Operation Rolling Thunder in 1965, it was what a selective bombing was carried out during what Operation Rolling Thunder. But as the war interfered, this was replaced by what saturation bombing. So now Operation Rolling Thunder, they were not bombing everything. As we explained here on top, that Operation Rolling Thunder, good people, they were doing what? The Americans were bombing bridge, army brackets, railways, roads, and army depots, right? But now the policy changed. They use saturation bombing. What is it when we talk about the saturation bombing? Saturation bombing, it's whereby they were bombing everything that is in sight. Here they were bombing everything, good people, right? Meaning dropping bombs on everything. 3 times as much explosive was dropped on Vietnam. And then now we have to understand, we must talk about the media now. There is no way, good people, that such things can happen without media being involved, right? The impact of media. Many people started to question Americans' involvement in the war. Why America is involved in a war? Because this war is between the North Vietnam and the South Vietnam. But now it seems like America is too deep in the war. Why? So people, they started to do what? To question themselves, right? Then now, here's Viet Cong, good people, made a mistake here when they changed the strategy of fighting. They are now fighting in a different way, but not guerrilla way. Does that make sense? So here, they made a huge mistakes. Let us hear what at the Tet Offensive. Viet Cong came with Tet Offensive. The Tet Offensive started on 31 January in 1968, right? The Tet Offensive, it was an attack by the Viet Cong. I believe that makes sense. It was different from the guerrilla fighting they has used before and was a surprise attack. So now I'm differentiating here that now Vietnam or the Viet Cong, they are coming with a new strategy of fighting, right? They are coming with what Tet Offensive. When we talk about the Tet Offensive, it's different from what the guerrilla fighting. Does that make sense? So when we talk about the Tet Offensive, it's whereby now the Viet Cong wanted to face America face to face. And good people, remember, America is a big country and Vietnam is a small country and it's nothing to be compared to USA, right? They expected people to join them, but uprising they hoped for did not happen. Does that make sense? Over 100,000 people were killed during this battle. So America won the battle. Does that make sense? And did not win the war. Don't be mistaken. I'm saying America won this battle of Tet Offensive, but did not win the war. People who won the war is the Vietnams. Then, what were the effect of the Tet Offensive or the result of the Tet Offensive? We have to understand. Tet Offensive was a huge failure for Viet Cong. That's number one. Number two, 47% of people were killed during the Tet Offensive were Viet Cong. That means nearly a half of their soldiers. And remember, they didn't have a lot of people. They only had what? They only have how many people? 100,000 people. And remember, the USA brought about 500 and something thousand soldiers. So do you see that it was a huge turning point or a huge failure for Viet Cong, this Tet Offensive? We said 47 of people were killed during the Tet Offensive were Viet Cong. Tet Offensive was a success for what? Americas, meaning that Americans have won the battle. I'm repeating myself, not the war, but the battle. I believe that makes sense. Viet Cong asked for peace talks soon after the Tet Offensive ended. Viet Cong never recovered from the step back of Tet Offensive. Tet Offensive was a huge turning point. Number one, was a major reason why Americans turned back against the war. Number two, before the Tet Offensive, Americans had been quiet, confident, and relaxed about the war because they thought maybe that means we're not going to win these people. Then now the US media had given the Americans back the impression that the war would end soon. Number four, good people, when the news of Tet appeared, many Americans felt that they had been deceived. Does that make sense? Then Viet Cong troops were shown inside the US embassy in Saigon, which looked like Viet Cong had defeated American army, right? And then Johnson decided to give up for standing as the president again. Then Richard Nixon promises to end the war and he was elected as a new president. And then USA withdraw all troops by 1973 and the North Vietnam took control of Saigon in 1975. Vietnam was united under a communist government and USA was defeated in Vietnam. That's how you write your essay, good people. It's very simple. Let us go now to U.S. Atrocities and My La Massacre turned public opinion against the war. Does that make sense? So, My Law Massacre and U.S. Atrocities, they turned public opinion against the war. Does that make sense? And led to anti-war protests in the USA, and many were convinced that the USA could not win the war and put pressure on the USA to withdraw. Does that make sense? And My La massacre happened on 16 March 1968. The US troops were searching My La, believed to be the Viet Cong stronghold. We are concluding our essay now. Over two periods, the Americans killed hundreds of men, women, and children. Lieutenant Seeley was convicted of war crimes, and he served 3 years of his sentence. Pictures of massacre were shown around the world, and people were appalled. It was another reason why many Americans turned back against the war. Then, in our conclusion, good people, we just have to prove that what happened. Do we understand? For instance, here it says the evidence presented in this essay clearly confirms that the statement that the withdrawal of soldiers from Vietnam signaled the defeat of the United States of America policy of containment. USA's tactics caused them to lose the support of their own people, which led to major anti-war protests and their later withdrawal from Vietnam in the 1975. Therefore, the American policy of containment failed as Vietnam became a communist country in 1975. That's how you conclude with your essay. That's how you conclude with your essay. Good people, there is nothing hard here. It's all about you being dedicated and going past the essay. If you can write it like this, it's very short, good people. Just take this essay and write, and you will remember me. You are going to remember me. Make sure that you take this essay and go and write it. So here are the few questions that we should be looking at. Here are a few questions that we should be looking at that I believe we will need, good people, to practice. For instance, this essay, it will be on question 4, right? This essay, it's going to be on question 4. Here's a question saying to us, question 4, extension of Cold War, case study, Vietnam. The military tactics applied by the United States of America succeeded in defeating the Viet Cong during the war between 1963 and 1975. Do you agree with this statement? Use relevant historical evidence to support your line of argument. So they are saying here, the military tactics applied by the United States of America succeeded in defeating the Viet Cong. Do you agree or you disagree? Here, definitely you must disagree. You're going to say one may disagree that the military tactics applied by the United States of America succeeded in defeating the Viet Cong. During the Vietnam War between 1963 and 1975. Do you agree with the statement? You don't agree, right? So this is how you're going to write your essay. You're going to say, one may not agree that Then you take the whole statement, you write it the way it is. One may not agree that the military tactics applied by the United States of America succeeded in defeating the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War between 1963 and 1975 because Viet Congs are the one who won the war. Then you say Vietnam was divided into two. There was a north and a south. At the north, there was Ho Chi Minh. I mean, at the north, there was Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh was popular. Ho Chi Minh was wanted by everyone. Ho Chi Minh was a communist. Ho Chi Minh wanted to unite both north and the south. At the south, there was Diem. Diem was corrupt. Diem was unpopular. Diem did not wanted to unite both north and the south. And at the south, there was a small group that had 100,000 members which wanted to unite both north and the south under the umbrella of Diem. Then every time, good people, when you end your paragraph, you must take the statement and say, because the military tactics applied by the United States of America succeeded. Okay, you're going to say because the military, okay, you're going to say because I disagree with the statement that says military tactics applied by the United States of America succeeded in defeating the Viet Cong during the war or during the Vietnam War between the 1963. And then you continue with your essay again. You say the reason United States of America got involved in a war is because of it wanted to stop the spread of communism. It wanted to contain the spread of communism. It wanted to fight against the evil of communism. That's how you write your essay. Good people, all the best. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.